Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Adventurers Club of Los Angeles. My name is Rich Mayfield, member 1211. I'm your first VP and Programs Chair for this year. Today, we have a great program. We have Rob Rowe here, a former U-2 pilot and engineer, and just basically can fly anything, right?
I hope.
So we've got an exciting program, exciting interview tonight. Remember, this is live, and we're doing these during the pandemic to, kind of keep telling the stories of adventures so we can get those programs out there. Obviously, we can't meet in person and have 70 people in the room, but we can speak at an appropriate distance with nobody else here, right?
That is good to go. That is correct. We've got our masks on too if we need to go there. So,
but I feel like you're 6 feet away. We're good to go. So remember, it's live. If you've got any questions for Rob during this interview, put them in the chat, and Andy will read them off later so we can stay engaged and all that. So if you like our channel, don't forget to like and subscribe and all that crap.
Right.
So, Skid Row. How'd you get that name?
Okay. I crashed an airplane in front of the 9th Reconnaissance Wing in 1988, and I went from being Rut Row to Skid Row.
So right before you crashed, it was Rut Row.
Yeah, it was
after it was Skid.
Yeah, you can't deny a name given, so...
That's how call signs work, right?
That's it, babe.
It is what it is.
That's it. No changing.
So, where did you start? How did you get involved in aviation? Where'd you jump off from?
Yeah, so my dad had an idea when I was a young man of taking me around the leaders of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and I met with a corporate lawyer. So I thought I'd want to be a lawyer, and I met with a guy that was served in World War II, and he was flying C-130s of all things, and the reserve on the weekends. And he was the president of his bank, and a couple other people, teachers. I met a guy who worked for mining, things like that, because I was interested in metallurgy and mining.
So your dad took you around to everybody. Yeah. Your dad ran a career fair on you, basically.
Yeah, he really did. I met guys that were, drilling holes in rocks and coming up with stuff where they could put in foundations in Minneapolis. That's the kind of guy. Anyway, so this one guy was like, flying, huh? Wow, I wonder what that looks like. That was it. But then we visited the Air Force Academy when I was a 7 or 8 year old, and I guess I started to get the mountains in my eyes. Like, this is a good place to go to school. Just the mountains were motivational.
So at 7 or 8 years old, you had your sights set on the Air Force Academy.
Yeah, I really did.
That's what the recruiters want to hear, right? Or that's what the admissions board wants to hear.
To be honest, 10 years later, when I was around 18, I wasn't thinking of that. My dad was kind of forcing me into a shoe that was going to pinch.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I'm in a theory of opposites with a young kid. They're going to do just the opposite of what you think they're going to do. So I think my mom probably said, lay off him and let him make his own decision. I think you'll be happy. Robbie doesn't need pushing.
Where was your dad pushing you into?
He wanted me to go to he didn't want me to go to a local school, even though Minnesota had great schools. And I had a fantastic girlfriend. I was thinking, stay close and old reliable. But no, I even after the deadline, 3 or 4 days after the application date, I put my application in, and I got picked up.
Wow.
I got picked up.
You must have been smart. Pretty good grades?
Luck of the draw.
I don't know. So I'm like a blue and gold officer for the Naval Academy.
Oh.
And if a kid puts in his application 3 or 4 days late, we're like, he doesn't want it.
Yeah, he doesn't want it.
Next.
Yeah, no sad excuse on the top of it or anything. I just put it in, and then somebody that didn't want to be a hockey player there went to University of Pennsylvania.
Oh,
probably.
nice.
So I picked up his slot because I wasn't a primary. I was like a secondary until at the very end, and they said, you get to go.
So the Air Force Academy was like, I guess we'll take him. But let's fast forward to graduation. Where did you graduate in that class? Number?
Academically, 8th, I think, or
8
something.
In your class of like 900 or something?
902. Jeepers, you've done your research, I'd say. Yep.
So I think the Air Force Academy made a good call.
It was a good call, yeah. It was free and fun.
And at one of the most prestigious and difficult aeronautical universities in the United States. What did you major in?
Ops research.
And?
Math.
And
finally aero. Propulsion.
So how many majors did you walk away from?
3.
3 at the Air Force Academy.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good. Where did you go after the Air Force Academy?
Princeton on a Guggenheim.
Yeah. Princeton on a Guggenheim scholarship.
Yep.
So you are a brainiac.
Okay.
I mean, that's a pretty illustrious career, just getting started, right?
Yeah,
and
it was,
that's at 20, 25 years old or something like that. You're maybe,
Yeah.
Air Force Academy, 3 majors,
Yep.
Princeton, Guggen Heights scholarship. So did you plan on flying at some point, or?
Wasn't sure really, because
Really?
the whims of the Air Force decide. But I'd passed the school house physicals and all that, so you're pretty much guaranteed a slot if you're
I've heard that about the Air Force
Zoo,
Academy.
Goomba. Yeah. So they're going to give you the slot if you want it, and so I didn't look back or anything. I just had to cut my beard and my long hair at the time, and off I went back in a proper second lieutenant, off to pilot training, and then there you go.
So what was the first plane you flew?
The T-37,
Uh-huh.
and then T-38s,
Uh-huh.
and then I was at Reese, and when I wanted to fly fighters.
So did you put in? What fighter did you want to fly? What was your favorite?
It didn't matter. They said, you talk too well, Rowe, and you've got good, make stuff up. You're good at, bullshit and good talk, and you can do the banter in the cockpit and still fly. So we want you to be, we're going to make you an instructor pilot at Euro-NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training. And I said, okay, I'll do that.
Right off the bat, instructor pilot.
Well, yeah, but you go to school to be an instructor and learn, live and learn. And the guys there train you at the time, at least. Maybe they don't anymore, but at the time they threw me to the wolves right on the flight line, and they were teaching the German Air Force and Dutch Air Force at the time, and they had fixed wing transition school there also. So we were like the initial cadre of this thing called NJEPT, Euro-NATO.
Fixed wing transition school. That's a bunch of guys that have been flying for a long time.
Yeah, helicopters, and they're going to be moved into fixed wings.
Okay.
So they were doing that, and they had just finished that, but they were doing German Air Force. But they said, there's a lot of other Europeans that want to come over here. North Texas has got as much airspace right here at Wichita Falls, Texas, that encompasses all of West Germany's airspace. So if they come over here, they can fly happy and free. Just got to watch out for the planes going in and out of Oklahoma City and Dallas. But if they fly in these corridors, and we can train them cheaply, fast, quick, good airspace,
Right.
38s, tweets, spank them out and send them back to Europe, and they'll be the best fighter pilots in the world. And the Air Force got behind that and said, we're going to do it. So
you went to Texas then?
went to Texas, for about 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
And you trained people?
I
Because you're
trained the
good talker.
best. Trained the best in Europe. Yeah, it was great.
So-
fun bunch.
So what happened after that? Where'd you go?
Yeah. Well, after a few years of that, of course, you're pretty much guaranteed at the time to pick whatever you want to fly. If
So
you're
if you
reasonably
took the-
passing check rides
Yeah.
and you're doing well there as an instructor, it's like pick your fighter. So I went to Holloman, flew F-15. I went to Seymour Johnson, flew the F-4, and that was great. And a friend of mine that had left the flight that I was in Texas at Shepherd, he went off to the U-2, and he said, Rob, you'll really like flying a U-2. Why don't you come out and interview? You're perfect for it, and you do good in your no-flap landing. So I flown me down. So I said, okay, Al, I'll give you guys a checkout. So I threw my paperwork in and a dream sheet to hopefully go there, but I had to apply. And at the time, maybe 1 out of 10, 1 out of 7 people that are in the application process gets a chance to interview in person and physically fly the beasts known as the U-2. So I said, well, I'll give that a shot, and did it. And they said, we like you, and that's up to you now, because we know it's your life too. So if you want to go fly fighters, that's fine. But the U-2 is waiting for you here at Beale Air Force Base.
That's a pretty cool option.
Yeah, but at the time I was surprised, because I thought everybody had to fly like 2 or 3 aircraft to get there. And I didn't. I mean, I was really surprised when they picked me. I didn't think I'd be qualified to fly the U-2. But obviously they qualified me beforehand, or I wouldn't have gone and done the interviews. So that's kind of moot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was a great
So
opportunity.
you moved out to Beale, which is here in California, right?
NorCal. Yeah, it's
NorCal.
right up just north of Sacramento.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where all the U2s are based.
Yeah, now they've been at other places, Del Rio, Texas. They've been in Arizona, Tucson.
So how much time did you have to spend training before you actually got to get into the cockpit of a U2? And what's that look like?
You're like any plane. You're going to do some ground school, and you'll be doing. They don't have simulators there, but they had. Gosh, that's a good question. I forget what they call the procedural trainers that they had there, but they were pretty good. They showed you switchology, which you got to learn. It's you have to be quick. You just got to be certain that you're picking things. They show you how cameras work. A lot of wet film back then.
Wet film being
wet film.
Just regular film like we would.
So wet
put in
film
the
is
camera
still
and
being
line it?
flown. It's an unclassified mission that's flown in the Mediterranean, and it's one of those peacetime kind of a thing where we give photos to all parties in that turbulent area so that they can all put down their swords and live happily with each other, knowing that there's not an army launching out of one country into another. Because it happened after the '74 war, Israel, Arab.
So
74.
so the term wet film, what exactly does that mean?
So a dark room, right? You're going to take film and it's going to be processed in canisters, and the bad silver chloride is going to be released, and the good stuff is going to be retained on a film, and you're going to have a product that's physical, and it's going to be opposite for imaging. Right. And that's going to be your negative.
And to this day, the U2 still
does that. In fact, there's other cameras that they're in very safe and secure storage areas. They're multi-million-dollar cameras that you should be proud of, that you paid for, that are waiting to go. Yeah, waiting to go.
Is it just the optics are so good on it and the system?
Yeah, they're really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've mastered the lens and polishing and a whole host of other things.
And nothing that we've done in digital since then has gotten to the resolution, or
well,
what?
It's getting there, and I'm not sure
where it's at.
Yeah, I'm not sure where it's at. I know where some of the other assets are and their resolution. And it's coming up all the time.
Yeah.
Nothing like repeatability.
Yeah.
In other words, looking at something and then looking at it again for the changes, and then keep copying it, right? There's missions out there that we can sort of get into.
So let's back up though. So you went to Beale and you started flying the U2.
Yeah.
Where did you do some deployments? Like some operational
one of the
stuff?
places you deploy right away, at least back in the day, and that was at Osan Air Base.
South Korea.
In South Korea, yeah. We flew missions in that area. And then...
So where'd you fly? Out of South Korea?
Around that area.
Around that area?
Yeah, around that area.
So around that area may or may not be Russia, North Korea, China. Those are some things that may or may not be around South Korea.
I am
that you
sadly not privileged to give you any information on that.
That geography eludes you at this time.
Such a happy event so far, so we'll keep it that way.
But you're there in South Korea. You're flying over. I'm going to guess those countries that I just listed.
Well, there's a lot going on in that corner of the world.
There is.
Exactly right. So yeah, we're.
But are you a combat aircraft? The U-2?
No. When Kelly Johnson was doing his doodle in front of the Atomic Energy Commission and the Air Force in 1954, he designed a carry-all, something that could carry a lot of stuff airborne. But he used, ironically, an F-104 fuselage.
Okay.
That was his initial doodle, and then he took away the great wings, the little slivers, if you can call them wings, more like knife blades on a 104, tossed them and added these ungainly glider wings and said, "Here you go.
So why?
This is your mission. I'll change the landing gear a little bit, and I'm going to get rid of some of this hydraulics that are unnecessary and carry a lot of fuel, and you're going to carry a lot of crap to a high altitude."
Yeah. So what is the wingspan on the U-2?
Currently, it's just at 105 feet, roughly.
It's huge.
60 feet in length.
Big, long glider wings, ton of fuel.
Yeah, beast.
How much? What's like the range of a U-2?
It's
published range.
I'm going to say over $6,000 or so.
6,000.
6,000 nautical miles.
Nautical miles.
So yeah, you got to multiply by 1.15, I guess,
and it doesn't refuel though, because most planes refuel.
Well, that's a good question. They actually prove that too, but because we are housed in these, below our skins, a kind of a pink body with needs, they said, we're going to certain physiological needs, sleep being one of them, and maybe gastrointestinal.
I don't know.
things.
I think the B2 guys would.
Well, yeah, maybe they have a better toilet too. You're just not going to be able to get up and walk around in a U-2. It's just not. You can't
That's
even
a good
really
point.
can't pivot. Can't.
So how long would a mission be?
Well, a typical mission, I suppose, it depends where you're located. You could be in somewhere in Southwest Asia, and it might be a 4 to maybe a 9 or 10 hour mission. It might be a steady Eddie, 9-hour missions every day in a place like
What was the
Korea.
longest mission you went on?
I flew a 12-hour mission, but just to deliver a jet from Beale, and I landed
delivering it?
on the west
Yeah.
side of, east side of England. It was an odd spot. It's called RAF Sculthorpe.
Yeah, because
I was pretty sore on that one.
Did the RAF fly these at some point too?
You know, there is RAF pilots that have flown the U-2. But at the time, no. We were just delivering to a new operational base because we had moved. We moved from Elkinberry. We slid operations over to this other place where I think they did something with the runway at Elkinberry.
So what do you do in a 12-hour mission? Because, like you said, in the B-2 you can get up and walk around. So what do you do when you need to relieve yourself?
Well,
Do you wear a diaper?
the idea,
So the astronauts do,
well,
right?
yeah, that's darn sure an option. But at the time, no. We had a urine collection device.
Yeah.
And you can
A
pee in that.
UCD?
Yeah, you pump up your suit and you blow the stuff down to a little tank below you.
Yeah.
And that worked great at the time.
And if you have to take a dump, it's a bad day?
Yeah, the ladies and gentlemen that fly the U-2 today are encouraged not to do the hard stuff. The number two, yeah. That can ruin the liner, and the liner is like hard to wash out, and you wouldn't
The
want
liner of the space. How much does that
spacesuit.
spacesuit cost?
I'm thinking 2 spacesuits with a helmet is right at about like a quarter
$250,000?
$1 or so. I'm not really sure, but it's a lot. And
But you are wearing like a spacesuit in there. So
yeah.
But you can pop it open to relieve yourself?
Well, the idea in the spacesuit is you don't want to pop it open. You can't be cavalier about something that's your umbilical. It's going to keep you alive if you do lose cabin pressure.
Especially if you pop that area open and you were to
Right.
lose cabin
Well,
pressure,
you know,
that would
there's-
be an affected area that you wouldn't be too happy about.
Pilot support equipment, thank God for those guys and gals that put you in the suit. They're checking that beauty out really good before you fly.
Yeah.
And that's an hour, more than an hour before your flight, about an hour and 10 or hour 20 or so. That you're not going to be able to even reach that area and mess with it because the zipper goes from the
So this is a robotic
bottom.
thing? You just press a button and you can go?
yeah, it's kind of behind you, and it's like in a zipper all the way in the back. So that when you land on the ground, that's going to be your hard point to getting the. If for some reason you had,
So when you pee.
so you
Getting
have
back to the nuts and bolts.
you have a device that you can open up with just a couple little flicks and pumping up your suit. You overpressure it. You're going to pump out the fluids that collect in that little basin. Now, there may be issues where you don't put it on properly and then it might leak on you, but that's only happened once or twice to me.
To you.
Yeah. I've had some other issues too in some other areas, but you try to stay away from those as
It's
well.
a bad day.
Yeah, and then you come home as quick as you can because, again, you don't want to, your desiring is not to
Sit in it all the time, right?
Right. That can be a bad day. So don't get sick. So high protein, low residue. It's still the way
Right.
I was all the way up to the end. Steak and eggs kind of a thing. Watch your diet the day before you fly. Get a good sleep. Hydrate like heck so that you're not using the urine collection device and all the other apparatus.
Right.
Yeah, because if you do that, then you're flying easier.
So once you're in that suit, you're like sealing. How high does the U-2 fly? What's the published?
Above
ceiling?
70. Yeah.
Above 70,000 feet?
Yep, we can say that. Yeah. Above
So
70, yeah.
this space, but your cabin's pressurized. What's the cabin pressurized to? Like, it's not 1 atmosphere, is it?
It is not pressurized to 1 atmosphere. At sea level, that would be a heck of a differential on the cabin versus the outside. But we've got it down now to
14.7,
about
right?
50. Yeah, right. 14 point. Yeah, it's good.
Diver.
That's right. We've got it down now to 15,000 feet tops. So even though we're flying at a higher altitude, we used to fly at like Mount Everest, 30 grand, right around there. We were having evolved gas issues and
What is an evolved gas?
well, if it comes out in the wrong spot, that can be the bends if it's like at an elbow, like a diver, like you mentioned. See, the U-2 has the same phenomena of a diver, right? He's down at whatever altitude, and he comes up too fast, nitrogen comes out of your blood.
So even though you were, or the suit was pressurized to Everest, but you were breathing pure O2.
That's right. So you're breathing pure O2 on the ground for about an hour just to denitrogenate yourself. You can't get rid of all of it. So
Right.
as the mission goes on, you're getting better. You're kicking out more nitrogen, and you're fusing your blood just about everywhere with 100% saturation and oxygen.
Yeah.
Okay. So that in itself is a good thing. But nonetheless, there are people that have central nervous disorders because they've
got bent.
bubbles, yeah, or bubbles come out in their brain, and
Yeah.
it gives them headaches, and that's not so good. So what they said is, gee, we can show the wizards that are running the physiological gamut of how people live, and what they've shown that at below 15,000 feet, you're not going to have any CNS disorders. You won't have any evolved. So we keep the cabin there. So what we did was we took an aircraft that had been broke at Lockheed, and we did some fantastic tests on it, and we realized that with the different pressurization mechanisms, just to alleviate what we did with valves and fuss, we came up with a way of getting the cabin down to 15 grand versus Mount Everest. So the guys and gals that fly it are sitting at a reasonable altitude.
That's
and
interesting.
They're going to not bend or have these horrible CNS headaches or seizures or whatever has happened in our long history, 60-year plus history of bad juju.
So this is interesting to me as an engineer because, I'm not an aerospace guy. Like I'm a systems guy, programming, robotics, that kind of thing. But what I don't understand is with an airplane, putting it in space means that you'd have a differential of 14.7. But like in my area of engineering, a differential pressure of 14.7 is nothing.
Minuscule.
So I've never understood, and I'm asking like the aero guy now, why is it that it's so difficult on an airplane to pressurize it to 14.7? Why can't you put it wherever you want? Are they just leaky?
Well, they are, and the outflow valves have to be robustly increased in terms of holding that pressure. You have to make the cabin a little tighter in order to get it to be there. So it has to be a little more overbuilt. We're not talking
and it's
about
just a weight thing.
Yeah, you're not going to the Marianas Trench or anything in terms of that differential.
Right.
It's not going to be built out of I-beams and steel and
But
whatever.
14.7 isn't a lot.
No, it isn't. But remember, what's the goal? You want to carry freight to altitude. Mm-hmm. If you're carrying over 2 metric tons, you don't want to put a lot of extra weight on it.
So that's all the configuration and just making compromises to.
Yeah, we're trying to save weight all the time,
Yeah.
so there's no hydraulic lines running out to gear on the wings. We got rid of that. We have pogos that drop out when we take off, and you're leaving, each one weighs maybe 45 pounds, spring steel, but you're leaving 90 pounds behind you. When you get airborne, it's like, all right, one more reason to carry more electronics and
That's
get up there
interesting.
and spy right.
So it only, like the U2 only has 2 landing gear.
Yeah, bicycle landing gear.
So
Kinda
it's basically like
primitive, right?
a glider. Yeah, let's throw up this video. Well, let's look at this picture. This is you, right?
Okay.
That's you?
Yep, that's me in
yeah, a
a
spacesuit.
spacesuit, yeah.
And then, so I think I can see it. Do we have another picture of the U2 that shows those landing gear on the side? Well, that's it flying. Beautiful aircraft.
Oh, I should have given you one without a signature.
Does look good. No.
Couldn't find one.
Well, let's look at this thing land. Right?
Okay.
Andy, you want to throw that video up there? This is you doing
This
this
is
landing.
this is the crash landing?
Well,
This is the nickname thing?
yeah, it's a nickname
Right, the
thing.
nickname change?
So this is you right here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
So you have one bicycle landing gear in the back. This excellent job, Sully.
horrible job. I wish I'd come in about 10 knots faster, and I didn't see that because it wouldn't have been a Class A multi-million-dollar crash if I had, because the longerons that could run down the fuselage twisted. Yeah, so that caused,
run me
caused a
through
lot of money.
That I mean,
fix.
considering that your landing gear did not work, so
Yeah.
that was something that was out of your control, right?
Right.
The landing gear didn't come down.
That's right.
So what could you? Oh, look, here comes the fire truck.
Yeah, okay.
Tell me about this.
Oh, yeah, this is not a good thing. And these guys apologized to me later. So I'm getting out of the cockpit, and I'm trying to get out of the cockpit. Now I can't see anything because I've been hit with this spray, this mist. But if you saw the canopy open, when it first opened, you'll see this big smoke plume coming out.
Ooh.
So these guys are honest engine looking at, he's on fire. And my feet were starting to get hot because the area underneath me was like hot. My boots were starting to melt. But I didn't really think about that or know it. You know, I was like, kind of like, let's just get out. And if I had ejected at that point, my legs would have sheared off. And you go, well, why was that? Because I had the yoke aft in my lap. And as the airplane ground down, you know, aluminum being soft and concrete's being like carborundum. Yeah, there was kind of a graphic nature there.
So it ground
Not-
it into,
yeah.
so it ground
Well,
that
they-
yoke into position?
So the yoke froze. It went right down to the bolts. And if I had ejected at that moment, the yoke wouldn't have thrown forward like it's supposed to with Palouse.
And that went through your mind at the time?
No way.
Oh.
I wasn't thinking of that, but they said you should have ejected. And then somebody said, no, we looked, and if he did, his legs would have stayed behind in the cockpit because the yoke was right here, and you would have just been pumping blood out through your femoral arteries.
So that would have been good.
That would have been good.
So what did you say could have gone better about this landing?
Well, I had two buddies pulling me out of the cockpit to begin with, so that was
Yeah.
cool. And they came over and helped me out.
This was the
But it's
second
really
pilot.
easy. There's a scramble handle pull, kit handle pull, and then you're flailing to just get rid of some sundry straps and fuss and then make your exit. But when you can't see because you've been atomized with this. So I raised the one visor when it got blasted because I'm seeing it daylight and it's sunny. And then I get blasted again by the second hose. Now I can't see there. So I'm wiping and I'm smearing and then I just said, you know, screw it, just raise the visor, because that's the only way I'm going to see with, you know, the old eyeballs. That's the only way to start seeing stuff.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter. These guys showed up about that time, and they were starting to do stuff that I was thinking of. So I let them take care of the right side because they were on that side. I did the left, and I hopped out and got to their the mobile vehicle that they always follow you on the landings with. And
So what's the deal
I was
with
off
that
the
mobile-
flight surgeon.
They always have a vehicle that follows the U-2?
They do. It's called a mobile, like M-O-B-I-L-E kind of a thing. Mobile, the mobile
Mobile?
officer.
A mobile?
The mobile mobile, yeah. It's usually a cruiser, like a police cruiser that can haul.
So what's
Fast.
it there for?
It's there as a safety vehicle. When you're flying a 9 or 10-hour mission or something, and even a 5-hour mission, you're not quite the same as you were when you took off. You're a little
Okay.
more fatigued, single seat, single engine. Gosh, you're kind of busted up. So you look forward to hearing somebody on short final saying, you're loud and clear, and I'm here to watch your wingtips and make your radio calls for you here.
So this is just to make the landing easier.
He was your backup pilot in the beginning, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, so he's already covering your butt. He's checking your weather, or she's looking at, you know, things that you aren't in terms of operational. We're having problems anyway. We're not getting a good data link today, or whatever you're doing. And they'll call you up and say, come on home. Or
So what is the backup pilot? What do they do?
they prepare for the mission like you do. They eat with you, usually, in the morning. And they take care of all the switchology. So when they drop you, you know, the spam in the can thing, when they're sticking you in and strapping you into the aircraft, all you're looking at is an aircraft that's been perfectly pre-flighted and the walk-around's been done. 'Cause you can't do that holding a canister and doing your own walk-around and checking control surfaces and, you know, flat check
in the
pins
big
and nuts
orange.
and
What do you call the big orange suit?
the bag.
The bag.
Yeah,
You can't do all that. So
No,
you have another
yeah.
pilot that's a fully qualified U2 pilot.
Exactly.
And you might do that for him the next day.
Yeah, usually you get a day or two off after you fly a mission. They'll give you that grace as you just go back to normal living, you know. Like, and then
So he's there when you take off. He pre-flighted your plane. He lined up all the switches and everything.
that's your buddy.
He saw you off.
your
And when you
team
come
man.
back, he's in that car helping you land.
Right.
That's really
it.
cool.
Yeah, it is. So
Yeah.
that's your, you know,
So that guy pulled you out.
right. That day, yeah, that guy
Yeah.
pulled me out, and another lieutenant. There's two lieutenant colonels. In fact, that wasn't my mobile. I think they said, "Go away, Captain Unchabunch. We're going to take over." Because it's a big deal. We're hearing,
Yeah.
you know, hundreds of miles away that you can't get the gear down. You know, what's your problem?
This is going to be bad.
Rowe, you're
Everybody's
being a
spinning up.
weenie, and we're going to tear this airplane about to find out how bad you botched that. But in the meantime, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt and hope you over-G that gear down, and which I did, over-G the aircraft. But
What's that? Basically you're like,
you can eject. They told me, we don't have enough gas to get down to Edwards and land on the lake bed, which is preferential versus, carborundum concrete. So it's like we're waiting for this one tanker to come in, or maybe SR-71 to land. And when those guys are on the ground, keep working. We're waiting for that to happen, and then you can land your aircraft because you're the only one. We know you're going to tie up the runway.
So you just basically were up there trying to get the gear down.
Right. So while I had the
landed.
engine operating
Yeah.
before I flamed it out, because I'm thinking, well, however many millions of dollars this J75R model is going to lose its engine if I land it with the engine, and I don't want extra thrust anyway.
Yeah.
I'll flame that beauty out. So that's going to happen. But they said go ahead and over-G it if that's what it takes to get the gear down, because we think there's just
you just got to bust it loose.
it's got to bust over the center lock and come on down.
But that didn't work.
Because they're scratching their heads, right? They're going, the tail gear came down. What's wrong with this bonehead? How in the world could he get that down? So they're pulling their hair out, and I was too. But
I mean, the U-2 was a pretty, coming up from what I've read, it was pretty an experimental aircraft throughout, right? I mean, it sounds like now it's kind of dialed in, but
yeah, it's dialed in, but it's still being retrofitted, right?
What does the U stand for again?
Utility.
Utility.
Yeah.
So this wasn't like this was a do everything aircraft type of thing.
Yeah. No, it's
strap on whatever you need to, and
well, the beauty of the U-2 is it carries that god awful freight, almost 5,000 pounds of freight.
Jeez,
that's a lot. So if you can carry that much and have all the kilowatts to operate these spy machine in its full glory.
That picture of the U-2 from the top, Andy?
But if you're going to do that, go to the trouble of having...
Let's see it from the side.
What's that?
That's a cool picture. I was just wondering what this thing was on the top of that I saw.
Yeah, I didn't send a picture of any other weird configurations, but there are definitely weird configurations. So you're showing what now?
Well, I saw this U-2 that had a bulb on the top. I was assuming it's some sort of communications.
That's a good guess.
Thing.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah,
super
that's another communication
satellite
device.
Communication.
Possibly.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Can't say.
Lots of little gizmos on the U-2.
But they're always putting new stuff on it and changing up the configuration.
Yeah, so it's the management is amazing. There's when I was there at one point, maybe a decade ago. Okay, maybe a decade ago, somebody told me, Rowe, there's 4,400 different configuration management positions for this aircraft. So we have a configuration manager,
4,400
engineer that just
positions.
follows the So we redesigned this aircraft in '98. One of the hero shots shows me standing next to it. But on that photo, we decided that we're going to make this aircraft the U-2S model, and we're going to upgrade the electronics on it to give it some slicks, which are secondary load centers, so that we're going to plug and play. And they've moved beyond that now. There's a new system called OMS. We're not going to get into that. We'll never have time because we're going to do Q&A here pretty soon. But anyway, so they're saying we want all these things going on just to be able to provide an easier repository for the electronics in the superpods, which are the things that are parallel to the fuselage, those big long beasties. Mm-hmm. And then
those are payloads. Those aren't gas tanks.
No, that's right. No, the wing's wet. That's why it's got that high roll inertia, and it's kind of ungainly. It's not flying like a fighter, even though it's got a fuselage.
It looks slick, but it's not.
But it's not. Yeah, it's got inertia, and so it's got issues. It's got adverse yaw. It's got fly-by steel cable instead of fly-by-wire. It's an ancient airplane. It's a lot.
You're actually
they have burned it down. Kelly on his doodling, that thing that they created in about a year at Lockheed. He figured out, we need to cut all the weight so we can carry the freight, and they did that. And that's the beauty of the U-2 is still there. So they've got all this room, I think it's 310 cubic feet. So just imagine what that is for space of electronics and gizmos that you want to send up to orbit and power, so that you can look down somebody else's gazoo and say, go ahead and plan something today. We're up here watching. So again, you need to be a happy taxpayer. You've paid for all this crap.
Yeah.
Crud. That's getting
from
the job.
From what you're telling me, what the U-2 is it's a utility aircraft. It can go high, it can go far, and it can carry a ton of spy shit. And that's what it does that nothing else can do.
Yep.
A ton of spy shit. Not how many pounds did you say?
Around
5,000.
pounds,
So
yeah.
two
Over
and a
2
half-
metric tons.
2.5 tons of
Yeah.
spy shit.
So what's a metric
That's
ton?
a lot.
2,200. So it's about 4,500 pounds, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Okay.
And-
So a little
and
bit over 2 tons.
2 metric tons. 2 metric tons. Yeah. So yeah, 4,500. Yeah, maybe it's 5,000 is too much, but it's a lot. So we carry a lot of
crazy.
stuff. Yeah, more than any of the robots out there that are, trying to put us out of business. But see, again, they've perfected all this stuff. It's working, and things can get lighter. You can't micro-miniaturize things that are always burning heat. So it's nice to have that space in a superpod or
Yeah.
in some other area where you can vent and run cold air, minus 60 degrees up there.
Yeah.
So you can get all that heat out of there and operate this stuff.
So what is the pilot task loading
Very
like
expensive stuff.
for a U2 pilot?
What's the tasking?
Yeah, like
The load?
Yeah. Because you've got, again, 2 tons of spy shit in the back.
Yeah.
What do you have to do to operate that?
Well, you need to think physio first. Like, we've got to go back to the pink body thing. If you're not watching your diet and, number one, that's going to go in there. And, I remember when my kids were born, it was just like my wife's, no, you're going to fly. I'm going to do baby watching, that kind of a thing.
And how many babies did she get at once?
Yes, she had quadruplets. So it was a real bugger when I just got into the squadron, the U-2 squadron at Edwards, or sorry, at Palmdale.
And you're like, let's have a kid.
I know. Yeah,
And you're like, yeah, we'll have a kid.
yeah, so there was
a child.
I know, it was a big deal. And it was like, gosh, what a great wife. She lets me sleep, I don't have to do baby watch. And that was cool. So, but yeah, you really have to watch, number
She's a
one.
saint.
Watch oily, peppery, you don't want to eat too many peppers and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
So you don't want your body to be in the way. So you're in shape.
Yeah, so that's the
It's
first part.
physically demanding.
And then then you said now you're going to the demand part, which is good because there's things to do in the cockpit. There's resetting and things got to be turned on. A lot of resetting. You got a navigation system, flight planning. There's again, thank God for all the people that support the pilots. It takes an army to get a pilot in the air.
How many? What's the crew look like for a U2? Like
besides the
support-
maintenance
yeah.
people that are keeping you alive and watching the airplane and its conduct.
I guess it's huge, right? Because it's
Yeah.
and there's all the spy stuff.
And you
right?
got engineers at Lockheed that are looking through stuff, or Raytheon, or whoever the subsystems are. They're all looking at their Quirtrons to make sure that everything is working that day. Otherwise, it's going to go back into the SIL, which is a system integration lab, and it's going to be checked there because they don't waste flying time if something's not working right. Which is kind of neat because we've saved a lot of flying hours. Not good for pilots. We want to be airborne. We want to.
How many hours do you have in the U2?
5,420,
Wow.
something like that. Anyway, a lot. Yeah, so that's a lot.
5,000.
5,000, yeah.
Over 5,000. That is a lot.
It's a lot. But anyway, yeah, it's a lot. So I keep getting told you're the high time guy, but it's not buying me a Starbucks coffee either. It's it's just what I do.
So once you're out there and doing everything, is there a lot of like payload? Like for a fighter pilot or B-2 pilot,
Yeah.
they've got to drop all those bombs or they got to target all that stuff. Like, do you basically have to do the same thing with cameras? Like you have to manage all those sensor payloads?
Yeah, those are the funnest missions because you're the busiest. Doesn't it sound like you just want to kick back and just be a lazy bum? No, you actually don't. You want to have more things kind of sort of almost go wrong, or have a wet camera, or be in a mode where you actually have to copy down altitudes and temperatures and kind of be an engineer, a flight engineer. If you're a flight engineer, then you're busy and the mission goes faster and you're kind of happier. If you got a mission that's kind of boring, and usually this can just be op sorties sometimes. If you don't have to call in all the time and make position reports or just talk to people, get the weather, whatever. If you're not in that mode, you're kind of sleepy.
Does it have autopilot? So
yeah, it's a great autopilot, and that's problematic too. But we'll never have time to get into.
What do you mean it has a
mock
great-
surf and stuff like that?
great autopilot.
It's a great autopilot.
It's just very, very
well. It's optimized at a very high altitude, 650, and
650 is
flight level.
65,000 feet.
Yeah, and NOAA gives you data, right? So
Okay.
the National Oceanic Atmospheric whatever association, they give you data, but it only goes up to 45,000, maybe 50,000 feet. So, well, what's going on above that? And again, I think we talked a little bit about that, but gravity waves, as strange as that sounds, not gravitational, But the whole phenomena of storms and
How the air's
mountain
moving.
ranges and the air and the
And you just don't have data for how
we don't have data for that. So yeah, we can get some. We have procedures to get us out of trouble if we languish too longly in them. But the problem is we'll get a mock surf kind of a thing where the aircraft will become untenable. Yeah, it's like the U-2 is like kind of a volcano.
So the autopilot can't handle it. It's in a situation where
Yeah,
it's
and
not.
it'll kick off, and it might kick off when you're riding the wave down, and then you're going to overspeed, and to pull out of it, you may over G.
What happens if you overspeed the U2?
Well, you fess up and come home. Relying on your integrity.
How far? What's your safety margin in overspeeding the U2 before the wings rip off?
Yeah, you're closer to the Mach limit than you are the stalling one. So you're liable to overspeed the aircraft, and it's there. There's a range, and you're going to know when you get there, but you don't want to exceed it too much. And again,
And you have to make a report if you do.
sure,
Yeah.
you come back and there's usually 99.78%.
There's not like a black box that makes the report for you.
There's no problem most of the time. They'll come back and go, oh, you oversped it. Okay, great. Glad you reported it. You overg'd it too. Okay, well, we checked and nothing's wrong. Airplane's okay.
Good to go.
Because they have places they know to look. Again, the magnificent men that keep the machines going before you hop
Yeah.
into one. They know where to go, and they can look at these hard points and go, there's nothing.
So did you ever experience that that mock surfing phenomenon?
Yeah, I had a really bad day. Like a seventh sortie when I was just launching straight up. It was a winter day, I remember, and I was going by Mount Whitney, and there was a juice of a huge plume of air going through that area thanks to the jet stream, and everything went kaplooey. Now, for me, most of the time, the worst times are when I'm at night, at my lowest ebb. I've had many more disconnects, but that day, it was like somebody crawled up and kicked the aircraft and said, "You're almost gonna do an aileron to roll today."
So it just.
Yeah, well, I just lost the autopilot, and I was in a dive, and I was looking at desert for a while, and I was pulling out of it, and I overg'd, oversped. I just came home.
And what altitude were you at when that happened?
I was in the initial portion of the cruise climb, so
somewhere over 70,000 feet?
No, the initial portion would be a lower altitude, so maybe I was just passing 59 or something.
Okay.
Yeah, I probably just started the Mach portion of it, which we have a transitional altitude where we go, okay, autopilot, start flying really good at this Mach and do your job. So, yeah.
So, I want to talk about something else too, because after you did all this U2 stuff, right? You're an expert in high altitude flying. You've done operational testing, right, for them. You get out of the Air Force. You worked for Lockheed, did you say, for a while in Northrop?
Yeah, so I was a reservist while I was at Lockheed. So I retired out of the reserves and still kept flying. I mean, yeah.
But I want to talk about the side gig that you had. The side gig you had is you got connected with Felix Baumgartner and Red Bull.
Right.
So with high altitude balloons.
That's right.
So how did you get connected with those guys?
Yeah, that was an old gentleman that I know, Pilots Equipment, that also helped Mr. Fossey, I think Steve Fawcett, set some records, and it was also his pilots support equipment guy because there's people out there that want to set records in gliders,
right?
No power at all, and they're going to not the Himalayas, but they're going to the Andes or they're going to New Zealand or whatever, and they're going to take advantage of the Arctic winds that kind of whip around with nothing. Just anyway, and he said, "Rowe, I got a guy that I want you to fly with, but you're not going to fly. You're going to certify something. But you got to meet this guy." Really? Okay. And he just came to my place on a Saturday, so in fact, Robert and I were doing Boy Scout candy sales at the time. One of my boy, and I said, "Okay." So I went over to this guy's place in an obscure location in Palmdale, and this guy gave me a pitch. I've never met the guy before at all, and there's a couple other.
What was the pitch?
The pitch was, let me look at you and walk around and make you feel like you're a fixture in the room for a while. Let me see if you can do this. And let me see if you can possibly motivate a guy that's going to do something for us later on, named Felix Baumgartner, and because we have a job for you.
And you were the guy that needed to say.
I was going to certify their capsule, the Red Bull capsule. And I didn't realize at the time that there was, that, first of all, anything about Felix Baumgartner and all his heroics and jumping off the right hand of Christ and in Rio de Janeiro's Bay and all these other weird things that he's done. He's an amazingly accomplished individual. He was having a hard time living in the spacesuit, of which, to me, is like my best umbilical cord next to Mumsy.
Yeah.
You know, it's
You're like, I've spent 5,000 hours in that thing.
Double-layered device, which 2 spacesuits in one, is keeping me alive. I feel comfortable. I can run air conditioning around in it and stay alive and fly. What's wrong? What? You need me to help a guy fly? And you're going to certify the capsule, too. And we want to know if you can fit in his spacesuits. But we're going to let it out. And he's a small guy. He's about 5'7", and you're about 5'10", 5'10 and a half, or whatever. And we're going to let the suit out to its max. And we think you can use his suit and do the stuff for us down at Brooks City Base, or whatever it's called. Brooks Air Force Base. But it's called City Base now. It's this combined thing down in Texas. Okay.
Yeah.
So I said, what's the hard part? Well, you got to write a letter to your company to make sure you can do this, because they're going to say you can't because we want no association with Red Bull. So make sure the lawyers are happy at Lockheed and Martin. And
man, the lawyers at Lockheed and Northrop seem to be very, very concerned about what their employees do, huh?
I think with good reason. Yeah, you can't have just anybody do anything.
Going off and doing side jobs.
Yeah, I mean, you're flying a multi-million-dollar widgets around, but anyway,
Yeah.
so I wrote my letter and got some help online and blah, blah, blah. And then I got the letter, and then I was talking to this guy at Sage Cheshire, who built the capsule. And he's got a team of engineers in his own right, and then he's got a whole bunch of Goombas that are doing the video thing.
Right, documenting the whole thing.
Yeah. So off we go to the city base, and I'm interviewing. It's like, this isn't part of the deal, but I'm talking to BBC, Nat Geo, everybody's people are.
And you're the guy that's basically saying,
I'm just certifying the capsule, and then I'm asked this question.
The capsule's safe, and he knows how to use the spacesuit.
So I'm going to this
thing. He's not going to die.
Yeah, we take it up to
there.
90,000 feet. We take it up to 120, and we take it up to 140,000 feet, or whatever it was. We're trying to certify the seals on it. And basically, it's the seals, this huge door. It's about 4 feet tall. It's perfectly circular. And it's, kind of like Christ's tomb kind of a thing. It rolls into spot, and then it rolls away.
Caesar
But
puts
it rolls into
seal
spot,
on it.
and then you depressurize it, you roll it away, and then Felix or myself or whoever's, we get to the outside edge, and we look down, and we see, 20 miles or whatever it is, 18 miles below us, and jump out. And that's what Felix has got to do. But again, the spacesuit's eating him up, and he got over that. He did really well, and he flew these missions for his own company.
So when you were certifying it, you said you sent it up to a certain altitude.
Right, but
you sent it up with a person in there?
So they put me in it, yeah, and they froze me because they had to see if the seals would work at the temperatures that we were going to be at. So they had to get the altitude right, and they had to get temperature. So I'm in
They do this on the ground?
all on the ground.
All on the ground. Okay.
This
So they put you in. So you
decompression chamber.
You get in the suit.
Thing.
You get in the capsule. Put the
Yeah.
capsule in the oven, not the oven, but they put it in the decompression chamber.
Yeah.
They freeze you. They take the decompression chamber up to altitude. They suck the air out, and you just sit there and you're like, yep, good to go.
Yeah. The cool thing is you are an engineer in that job, so you're not bored. You're always working nitrogen and oxygen and pressure. So your outflow valve is important. And so you're sitting there. It's kind of like you're in a bathyscaphe, going to the Marianas, or whatever, to the ultimate depth,
And what did they pressurize that capsule to?
We kept it at. It was comfy. It was probably like the U-2 cockpits today.
15,000?
50 grand or so. I can't remember, but I remember the oxygen content didn't matter in the beginning, and then I think we beefed it up towards the end. But then at the very end, of course, didn't care about anything. We just outgassed the whole bazing, the whole job, and prepared to roll the.
So
the chamber out the door.
did you guys actually send the capsule up on a balloon with nobody in it?
No, they put Felix in it the first couple of times and didn't bust Joe Kittinger's altitude until the third and final sortie.
So what did they do if they didn't bust the altitude? He just came back down in the capsule?
Well, he had that provision though. He could come down in the capsule. There was a way of coming down and then have parachute mechanism that would help you. So what you did was you after he came out of it, they'd unreef the helium portion of it, and the thing would come down to the ground. And I'm getting ahead of myself. But anyway, so the whole idea is take this thing up to an altitude, Felix jumps out. Then they go to second altitude, and Felix jumps out of that. And the third time, they're going to set the altitude records and bust all these things and have the longest free fall in the world history books, which Felix still has some records. And the other gentleman from Google, we don't need to go into that, but he did some great stuff too. But the whole idea was we're going to set some altitude records, and we're going to show what man is capable of in parachuting, and set these cool records and sell more Red Bulls, that kind of thing.
But a lot of the complexity of it was, can we get a guy up to altitude without...
Well, will the capsule work, first of all?
Yeah.
So I have alternative oxygen to keep myself alive if something went wrong. But yeah, everything's set up for me. And there's a whole bunch of switches and stuff. It was a pretty complicated... It was even more than a U-2 kind of in some aspects. There was a lot of switchology and lights and cameras and coolers and cryo, this, that, and the other, and electronics and fuss that, in many ways, again, complicated, but not necessary for the story. So I certified their capsule. Then they broke it because it came down after the second jump and hit some rocks. And then we recertified the capsule again, and Felix busted all the records and did his hero thing. But yeah, he gained some motivation from Mr. Skid Row because he saw BBC. I was on BBC, and I said, "Yeah, I'd do the jump. I need some help. It's been a long time since I earned my parachute wings.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'll need to, go back and do that. But if for some reason you guys need somebody, I'd like a bigger spacesuit.
Yeah.
Because this is a cramped one. And if you give me that, I can probably do his free fall thing.
That being said, it does sound, it's an interesting, like if you're going to pick someone to do this, right? If you're going to pick someone to go do the jump, initially, I think, you look for a daredevil like Felix, who's done a bunch of parachuting. But why not look for the guy that spent 5,000 hours in that spacesuit that's very comfortable in a high altitude? Because that's a majority of it.
I think they had their guy, and
going up is the hard part.
Yeah.
Coming down, it's done.
I think it's psychologically being in the bag for so many hours was the killer for Felix, and they didn't realize that was a hitch. So,
for you, there's only
that wasn't a hitch for me.
Yeah, it would have been like 2 seconds of question for you right before you step out the door, and then you have no choices, right? Yeah. So you're comfortable all the way up, and then you have 2 seconds of doubt, and then if you step over, it's done.
Right. Yeah, I got to get to that step. I got to be able to stand up, and I got to be able to just kind of launch myself. And if you look at his video, it looks simple, but getting outside, there's.
So would you do it?
I would have done it. Yeah, at the time. Yeah, I would have.
How much does it cost for you to do it?
Cost?
Yeah.
In
you
helium?
Didn't ask them. You'd be like, "Hey, you guys want to do this again? I don't need to break a record. I just want to do it from really high."
Yeah. No, it'd be that out of the question now, of course. But back then, it was a player. I would have done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So the last question is, with all this high altitude stuff, and we sort of touched on it earlier too. What happens if you're up there and your cabin depressurizes and your spacesuit fails?
Right.
Do you just die instantly? Does your blood boil and eyes pop out and stuff, or what?
Yeah, you're not on a speed dial kind of thing. You have to move with a purpose. It's not like you're heading towards a door because all you have is an ejection seat. You're not heading down that path at all. You just have to realize, I got 2 of these things on. Even though it looks like it's a single spacesuit, I'm talking about the spacesuit now, not the black eggshell, the U-2. Some part of it's failed, the engine's failed. You're going to ride that very slow ride down to thicker air and land. That's your goal. And it's going to be over an hour of just gliding to get there. But
this is if the engine fails.
If the engine fails.
You got an hour of gliding just to get down to altitude at safe speed.
Right. Well, you're going to hopefully restart the motor too. You don't know why it conked, but if it did, you got an air start envelope. You're going to get down there. You're going to use that
So you
hydrazine.
have, so the level that you fly at, the engine will not start at that level. So if it flames out, you got to go back down.
That's not an air start envelope altitude.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the best thing to do is you go through your procedures and tighten up your suit controller and make sure you got 100% oxygen. You got an oxygen couple bottles that'll you can ride that ride down with a brain that can still throw switches and talk to people on the ground and say, "Hey, I'm a hurting toad.
I'm in a bad place right now.
I'm a hurting toad, but I think I can pull this off." And we've done that before in flight tests because we had to test some of the motor capability and the restart capability. And we had a CCMP engine with new bearings and combustor and all that other fuss. And that was an interesting day. I mean, because I had to be in the...
So you actually have to cut out the engine and then ride it back down as part of operational test.
Part of flight test. Now, there's difference between OT&T and DT, but exactly right. So
what happens if like you flip your mask up and you have no pressure and you're that high?
Like if you want to scratch your nose or something?
Yeah.
Nothing.
But, well, I mean, and the cockpit.
Well, now it's a 15 grand cockpit. Back when it was a 30 grand cockpit, it was a little worse.
What if it was nothing? What if it was just depressurized?
Yeah, if it was depressurized, not a good scene. I think Kubrick did it right in 2001 Space Odyssey because he was showing a guy that it's a hurting toad also, but he was moving through a vacuum into another area that he could pressurize and live. I think he would have had more eyeball issues, with the veins, some kind of a... But you're not going to instantaneously pop eye, pee blood.
So not like Total Recall,
skin.
more like 2001 Space
You got
Odyssey?
some time. I mean, if you could hold your breath, if you're not excited and you could catch your breath too, you can have maybe a minute. Most people can hold their breath for about a minute. But once you lose that, your TUC from breathing
What's TUC?
Time of usable consciousness. So you maybe have 30 seconds or so, 35 seconds, I think.
So from your last breath, assuming that your last...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're outgassing good stuff. You've been knocking out nitrogen the whole time, right? You pre-breathed. You didn't do it there, but now maybe you flew a 5-6 hour mission. You've almost knocked out the nitrogen, a lot of it, and now you're sitting at a cabin altitude of 68,000 feet or 70, whatever, and you're going, well, you got your spacesuit. Your spacesuit's going to keep you down.
Do they test? Do they put you in a chamber and like knock off your oxygen and let you black out?
Yeah, they do, but they do that to every Navy,
pilot?
Marine, Air Force pilot gets a chance to see what his
What's that like? Do you get
get to see what his physiologically what his symptoms are of being hypoxic.
Yeah.
So
I can't remember. I think I might have done that before. I don't remember it well. I don't think they took us to the altitude that take U-2. I think they basically
Doesn't matter.
They just had us doing like some puzzles, and then we weren't doing the puzzles, and then they're like, "All right, take a look at your puzzle," and you look at it and you're like, "That's not my writing."
I know.
Like who wrote this?
Exactly.
Is that what it was like for you?
Same thing. Yeah, you got to know that symptom of hypoxia. For me, it's like a burning sensation. I think in the back of my neck, everybody has a different.
But you were trained to a level that you knew that you were out of it.
Because
when I was I didn't think it was just like, and you were out of it, and now you're back in it.
I think you'd burn through that real quick if you were up at that altitude with no oxygen. I don't think you'd have cognizance of, there's that feeling. Too bad there's no oxygen around. You'd just be dead. That's it. You're going to be twice the altitude of Mount Everest in just a few seconds, and you're gone. You're gonzo. That's it.
In 35 seconds, you said, or about that.
Right.
So you got 35 seconds, but like, bad situation. Can I fix it? Can I fix it? Can you put that? Will the autopilot bring you back down to a good altitude?
Well, if
can you tell
the
the
engine
autopilot
conks out, you're losing a lot of electronics, so you're going to hand fly it. Yeah. And those are no fun missions. I mean,
and is it
I like
stable,
the autopilot.
Like hand flying? Like if you were hands off the stick, would it just glide, or is it pretty?
Yeah, it's not bad. First of all, you were trimmed up. If if the stab was doing its job, the auto trim feature of the Autopilot. So you might have a little control force to deal with. And while the hydraulics are peeling its onion back and going down, to zero pressure, you got some time to get your trim right while you're doing this glide. Maybe you want to pick a slightly slower speed. I'm not saying you would, but I would. That way you're ready for your landing too, because you got control forces you got to deal with if that engine doesn't restart.
Yeah.
In the envelope that you're trying to get down to.
Yeah.
And that happens. That can happen. Certain conditions where the fuel control unit's conked and you're dead. I mean, motor-wise.
Yeah.
So yeah,
let's
plan on. We always plan for SFOs. Just about every other mission.
What's an SFO?
A simulated flame out. So we're practicing no flap and full flap SFOs just to emulate that condition, just in case. And it's nothing like an F-16 SFO because they're coming down like a rocket.
Yeah.
Like a rock, actually.
Yeah.
They glide like greased toolboxes. The U-2 they're beautiful. They're
It is.
They're an elegant lady.
This is you in front of it, looking like a badass, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Much younger. That's a C model aircraft that's parked over in Blackbird Air Park. Yeah.
That's cool.
Hey, there's more aircraft in the ocean than there is submarines in the sky. Some things just happen, right?
Hey, well, you want to take some questions from the chat? Let's do some Q&A here.
Bring it.
Andy, what do we got?
Hello, everyone. Thank you once again for joining the chat. It's wonderful to see your smiling faces. We got a few questions tonight. First question comes from Serious Improv, and they want to know, when did everyone think that the U-2 program ended, and did it actually end?
Oh,
good question.
Well, there you go. One of our least favorite words in the U-2 community is sunset. And I can tell you, working at almost 25 years at the Skunk Works, that it came up all the time. There was something on the hill or in the Pentagon, that would be, your demise is in sight. We think the robots have really come up with the winning answer, and they're going to get everything right, and the FAA is going to be happy, and they're always going to work on the spot, and we don't need any more pilot kin to fly these beasts. So goodbye and go away. And then somebody wakes up and goes, there's certain missions out there. We got to cover those too before we get rid of these guys and everything they stand for and love. Okay, yeah, okay, we'll keep you alive for a little bit. And then finally it comes to like, well, why don't we try to get the airplane upgraded? And you really got to bend some arms.
And then you extend the lifetime, right?
Right.
Just keep extending it.
So
we're still flying, right? No?
Right, and they're still doing upgrades.
So in terms of like the U-2 program being dead, it is not dead. It is still...
Yeah, in the name of safety.
Yeah.
There's people out there working on our behalf that are going to the Pentagon saying, make it better, because these guys could use the latest upgrades. So these cantankerous MFDs we've given them, they need another cockpit upgrade that's going to even be better, cheaper, whatever, and sell the story.
Remember when the space shuttle was in this position?
Yeah.
They're like, oh no, we're done with it.
Right.
It's past its useful life. But I mean, so the U-2 has spanned the entire shuttle program and continues on to this day.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
It goes to almost space.
Yeah, well, there's like 0.5%, 0.75% of air up there. But
crazy.
It's enough for an air breather.
It's enough to have aerodynamic forces.
Air breathing motor to continue its operation.
And lift, right?
And lift. And deal with all those gravity waves.
All right, next question.
Next question comes from Larry Stern, and Larry wants to know, can you fly a Cessna 150?
I can.
Sure.
I have probably 30 hours in Cessna 150s.
Yeah.
And I've got 2 students
30
right now.
30 hours.
30. Well, I have a lot more in 172s. But yeah, they're almost the same.
You guys haven't seen his resume, but he did send over a resume that includes flight hours from probably like your favorite platforms. Because it says above it like 90 aircraft flown or something like that. And then below it has like thousands and thousands of hours listed in maybe like 50
3
platforms.
aircraft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got T-37, A-37 time, and then But I love 150s. That's great origin.
Yeah.
Anybody can fly a 150. Pretty much, they can be a U-2 pilot. It lands a lot like it in a way, really. I mean, but
Yeah.
and then you'll see some of the greatest pilots, fighter guys, and I'll have a hard time flying that airplane. It's a good question, because I think about the 150, and I'm training 172 right now for my students. But what I've learned and taught through tweets, 38s, all the time, B-52s, U-2s, all the times that I've been an instructor in those assets, everything, the U-2 has taught me a lot about landing, the Cessna 172. It all comes back to the fundamentals we learned. You get down in the flare and be patient. And the U-2, you got to be patient. I mean, the F-16, you have to be patient. It doesn't want to land either. It just it's like a Frisbee that just keeps going.
So, young pilots getting into aviation, what do you think someone needs to do if they want to get into the cockpit of a U-2 or whatever the next greatest super secret spy plane
They
is?
must endeavor to persevere. If they're going to do it on their own and not through a 10-year commitment for the U.S. Navy or Army, Marine Corps, Air Force, then they're going to have to learn how to eat some crap and pour juice and clean up cockpits and maybe fly a corporate air. They're going to have to do things to get the clients to their job and build up time, or be an instructor pilot and give back. And everything we, as we live our lives, everything we take, we must give back. So it's a good way of starting out. You're going to accumulate hours if you're teaching other people to do what you love to do.
Yeah.
And building time is good until you can finally move into turbines and get that magical number, so you can start going airlines, man, if that's your goal. I started out in the military and one of my goals at one time, several times, was, I'll be an airline guy. I'll be FedEx. I'll, haul some trash around. I don't mind that. That's cool. See the world. It just never happened. I always got called back because,
I always wonder how guys go from, flying a fighter jet or a U-2 or a B-2 or something like that,
Yeah.
and then going to the airlines and flying that big cargo plane, basically.
Right.
It seems like a tough transition to me, but I mean, I know tons of guys that do it, and they love it.
It's a huge transition. When you leave the beauty of flying the little airplanes that you learned in, you realize you are going to become a computer operator. You're a systems operator. I talked about the magical moments when you get the busy U-2 sortie, but when you're flying an Airbus or a Boeing jet around the world, you got to know those systems and how to get them to do what your mission calls for. It may be you're going to Yokohama out of Oakland, but you have to program it to do that, and you have to, be able to, set it all up, set up the computer so that you fly.
Do you think the joystick's going to go away?
You mean a side stick controller? Yeah.
Well,
you mean
the yoke? Do you think that is going to go away in planes?
Or a stick?
Stick.
Yeah. No. And just become a robot? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it will. I'm not sure.
Well, the Dragon capsule doesn't have a stick, right?
Right. That's right.
They just go boop, 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 dock.
Yeah. No,
Big glass screen.
If we're going to fly commercial jets, at least probably next 30, 40, 50 years, I think you're still going to see cockpits with people doing things. Maybe not that long. Maybe
Well, sure, cockpit, but I'm just saying, does a commercial jet eventually get rid of its stick? Or its
How are
yoke?
you going to take control unless if you lose all the computers, you don't have nothing to click and point and tap.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to take over for that. You need to have some kind of positive control that can talk to that last remaining computer that can, or whatever.
But that's interesting.
It's fly-by-wire, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so much is fly-by-wire, but the U-2 wasn't, right? U-2 was steel
cable.
So if all your computers go away, you can still
Right. That's
do
your
something.
game. That's your game on, right? But
right. But I mean, like the F-16 or the B-2, if you lose all your computers,
all of them.
doesn't matter if you still got a stick. It's
You got the handles, if it's a fighter.
Yeah.
Or a U-2 or an airplane that supports that. Otherwise, if it's steel cable, And then if it isn't, I mean, you have to have some mechanism that still goes back to the core and still allows you to fly this beast on whatever primitive aspect it's at.
Do those planes like
with
the
hydraulic
F-16s
assist.
have something? Because the F-16 has a side stick, right?
Yeah.
So what if you lose computers on the F-16?
With the pesky 8 hours in F-16s or what measly hours I have in it, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I can't
Do they
MSU.
have a fallback mechanism to control that aircraft?
I can't make stuff up on that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Next question.
Next question is, where did the U-2 get its nickname?
What is its nickname?
The Dragon Lady.
Throw
Didn't
this-
I send a picture?
Yeah. Throw it up there, Andy.
Wow.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. So what do we? This is the Terry and the Pirates.
Yeah,
thing?
you see
I know
this?
it's like black and white. That was like at a reunion down at Tucson about 15 years ago. My wife and I went that, and somebody had that on the wall, and I said, "I'm going to take a picture of that."
What did the quote say?
Well, it's not for real, but there was a picture on the cover of Terry and the Pirates, and Terry was questioning the famous Dragon Lady who runs, I think, a Shanghai bordello. But she's also the center of a spy web right before World War II, I think, is what the whole Terry
That's
and the
the
Pirates.
backstory of this
I think that's the
lady.
backstory of it. And in that, somebody had written, we're going to, the U2 hadn't even come out when this magazine was out. I think we'll name the Dragon Lady, huh? I think we're going to name the U2 after you.
But that's
and
not where
somebody
it came
actually
from.
did. Somebody actually did. Somebody said, we'll call it the Dragon Lady after Terry and the Pirates.
Really?
Some old
So a
head,
joke.
some CIA guy
Yeah,
back
that's
in
great.
the 50s when these beasts were just starting to fly and go to these obscure places like
Yeah.
Sverdlovsk, where Gary Powers was shut down. He came up with that. He said, "Yeah, this is perfect. It is because you don't want to. You'd rather dance with a lady and not fight with the volcanic temperament of a dragon.
Some of the best names have come.
So Dragon Lady,
Yeah.
that kind of a theme.
Yeah. Do you remember? I think it was the anti-satellite system high altitude
Oh yeah.
test.
Well, the F-15.
Now, have you heard of that operation that some guy put together? I mean,
Oh.
someone had to name this operation, right? So they named it the anti-satellite system high altitude test.
Okay.
And there's a donkey on the patch because it's ASSHAT.
Oh, jeepers! Hey, clueless wonder here.
Someone got that name through the Pentagon and all that stuff. So sounds like it was a similar story. It's named after some Chinese bordello operator.
Yeah. Who is in the center of everything?
Good one.
Yeah.
All right, Andy. Next question, please.
Next question comes from Larry Stern, and Larry wants to know, did you ever meet Francis Gary Powers?
And the answer to that is no. He died 74 in a helicopter accident, I believe. I was a junior in high school.
Young man.
Yeah. Did he die? Did he die in a helicopter accident? I think he did. I can't remember.
That sounds right to me. I
think he did, didn't he? Yeah.
He died in some aircraft
Yeah, anyway, no, I
accident.
didn't. I wish I had met him.
Next question, please.
Next question is, are there any operational differences between the U-2 and the SR-71?
That are similar?
I guess differences.
I guess
Where-
the
where the
problem-
Operational differences?
what are the
Oh,
major
well,
differences
geez, they
between-
fly 4 times faster than us. I guess that's
mean,
a big one.
the
Went
real
to-
question is,
They went to higher altitudes.
like, what are the different need states for each one? How do you decide which one goes out on a mission?
Well, okay, that's a good question. One of the things that I found out about the U-2 unit was we were doing an awful lot of the reconnaissance. And the SR wasn't doing nearly as much, but they cost a lot more, and that's why they went away. And one of the questions I get all the time is, and when I used to do schools, when people even knew about the U-2, or would ask cognizant questions, was how is it that the SR-71 came off about a decade after you guys became operational, but then it was retired well before the U-2? And again, it comes down to freight and nautical miles per pound kind of a thing, where you're paying for this freight to get to altitude, and you get long station keeping, I guess I would say, Rich, and to the person that asked the question. And that in itself is an efficiency. There's efficiency built in the DoD models, and they just couldn't. They didn't have a Soviet Union to light up anymore to go check and test its defenses with something that was high speed, like an SR-71 that would light things up, and then they have sub-collectors around, RC-135s or whatever, that would collect on that intel while things were going awry in the Soviet Union. You could see these things coming up and get excited. You collect against that, and then you bring that data down and process it. Well,
So what you're saying is the SR-71 would go across and they'd light that thing up.
They
and
could.
You'd
And
collect the data
that
from
was
where
a
all their-
mission. Yeah, exactly so. And
So,
that,
so the SR-71 could fly higher and faster, but it couldn't carry
yes,
2.5 tons of spy shit.
it could carry a lot, and it had some things in it that were good. But remember, one of the beauties of the U-2 is especially on one of its missions. Let's just say that you can go up and you can fly a mission, and you can go along a chord, you know, from A to B, and then you're going to pick up that chord in reverse from B to A, or maybe it's B to, you know, alpha plus or whatever. But it's essentially along the same chord that you started out at, but you're going to repeat that all day long. If you're looking out and you're looking at something on the side and you're getting data, and now you're repeating the data, you have ways of overlaying, and your picture becomes much more robust.
Almost like a synthetic aperture type
Sort
deal.
of, kind of.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what synthetic aperture does. And so you pick up these things, and the resolution becomes astounding. And when you're doing flash in the pan, you're blasting by somebody's border at Mach 3 plus.
Yeah.
You don't have the resolution. You certainly don't have the staying power. I mean, it takes a fleet of tankers to keep it going.
Yeah.
You know, we used to joke, we'd say, yeah, another aircraft that glides like a greased toolbox, the
Yeah.
SR-71. Fantastic airplane, everybody loved it. You know, it's the most beautiful.
But it's more of a rocket than an airplane.
It is, you know.
Especially compared to a U-2 with a 105-foot wingspan.
After it takes off, it needs a tanker. You know, it beats a speeding bullet. You know, at its altitude, operational altitudes, but it needs tanker fleet to keep it going.
So, if the U-2 doesn't have an engine, how much of a glider does it become?
Quite a bit, yeah. You go
Because gliders can stay up indefinitely.
hundreds
right?
of miles. You can fly for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, you could.
But
tell.
it's not glider status. Like you couldn't catch a thermal on the thing and keep it up.
No, I don't believe you can, because I'm not going to say that actually.
I mean, it's not a thing that they've tried.
I've seen tight little thermals in the Palmdale area, Palmcaster, whatever.
Yeah.
That just go up, you know, like 4,000 feet. And who's to say if you didn't? Now, tight thermals are not a good idea of an aircraft that can't turn like a 150, for example, or a 152,
But,
or
you know,
a
if you
glider.
didn't have any gas in the wings, right?
Right. I mean, if you were light as a feather, you know, and you got in the right one, and it was a wider thermal than the one we just described, maybe you could thermal a U-2. Nobody does it. We got jet, you know, and we're not.
You got a jet.
Yeah, and we're not. And if we don't, then we're thinking about the SFO and not.
Yeah.
Oh, I picked up a thermal. I think I'll sit up here like a clown for another couple turns in the pattern. You know, the ops officer or your mobile is gonna.
What are you doing? Oh, I found a good one over here.
He's not gonna buy you a beer. I'll put it that way.
All right, next question, Andy.
Next question comes from Reggie Sully. And Reggie Sully says, "Thank you for all your fascinating stories. Quick question. When you were flying over enemy areas, did you feel somewhat protected because of your high altitude in the event of missiles or aircraft?"
Yes, and besides my maintenance people that kept my robust aircraft flying, which is the greatest feeling in the world, because a pilot without maintainers is just a pedestrian with a leather jacket, and cool sunglasses. If you're flying in the FIBA or near a battle area where there's lots of enemies,
What's a FIBA?
forward edge of the battle area.
Okay.
You know, whatever. It's an old term. It's probably arcane. Anybody out there?
People love that stuff.
They've been throwing rocks at me probably half
FIBA,
the interview
forward
already.
edge of the battle.
Going, Rowe has so many things screwing. Anyway, if you're flying in an environment where you have fighter protection and other missile assets, you're a low. See, a lot of things we miss in this whole concept of war is we need the high-tech weapons to keep the low. I'm not going to say the U-2's low tech. We've got great stuff on board, but look at the aircraft, the airframe. We all know it was created in the 50s, and it just got enhanced in the mid-60s to create the R model. But that's a low-tech, great frame to put crap on and go fly fantastic missions.
Yeah.
But you need the high-tech crap to keep the low-tech stuff that's cheap, that's long-lasting, to continue to do its job. And I tell people that all the time. So, yeah, B-52s are still around. Well, they carry a lot of magic too, but why don't we just keep building B-2s? Because they're expensive. And we'd love to build more B-2s, and we'd like to build more B-52s maybe. But
Those B-2s can carry a lot of
they
bombs.
carry a lot of freight, and
Yeah.
it's cheap. And if you could open a low-tech corridor for these guys to get in, because the high-tech assets did it, the B-2s and the fighters and the missiles opened the corridor to do the bombing, great.
Yeah.
And get the U-2s through so they can watch the whole envelope of history unfold in that FIBA. That's what you want. You want these assets to do just what I said, that mix. There's a mix.
Yeah. You need everything.
I don't know
It's
what
a
it is.
team.
I'm not a 4-star, okay?
Yeah.
I don't know what it looks like. I have no
Yeah.
idea. But
there is a shape that they're trying to shape the
Yeah.
force into.
And they're
to carry
savvy.
out the missions that they need to.
yeah, the wizards at the Pentagon, they're all savvy. They know crap like this. So they go, yeah, we're not going to get rid of the U-2 right away. So that's why.
That's why it's still here.
Yeah, well, we got a 200. Here's the weird part. The U-2's been around. I'm rambling, but we've been around for like 240 years, right? The country, and the U-2's been flying for just over a fourth of that. Isn't that an amazing thought?
It is crazy, huh?
A fourth of the American history. There's one aircraft, and there's B-52s, and T-38's a great machine. All these things, and C-130. Those are four. In fact, those are 4 good airframes that have been around for about 60 years that are doing the mission.
That's crazy.
For us,
Yeah.
we should be happy.
Oh, yeah.
Taxpayers.
It's a good
Yeah.
investment.
Exactly.
So we got 2 more questions, right, Andy?
We got 4 more.
We got 4 more questions. They're rolling in.
4
I
more
hope you have time.
Yeah, the
Yeah, we
next
got time.
one comes from
Burn it.
Serious.
I'm splooging, man.
Sorry. Next one comes from Serious Improv, and they want to know: did you spend much time in Wichita Falls?
Wichita Falls, yeah.
5 years, or about. Got there in '81, left in '86. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Training, right?
It was great. That was some of the funnest. Yeah, Germans, Danes, Dutch, Norwegians, Americans, Brit occasionally,
Flying with
Belgium.
everybody?
Yeah, Turks, Greeks. Beautiful ensemble of wonderful young people, and they're all heading towards their wings. And our job was to make them safe. Well, keep them safe so they could learn under the guard and
What was
guys.
the scariest student thing you saw? Like, what was the scariest thing a student ever did to you? This is a result of a student. This was a student.
It was. I had to write the airplane up. What we did was we did an inverted. We got into an inverted spin,
Not an inverted
but it
dive
wasn't a
with MiG,
usual
huh?
inverted spin. The gear was down, and the flaps were down. And this guy had manhandled the aircraft. Manhandling's okay, just don't stay in it long. There was no chance of me intervening fast enough. So I probably did some crazy things. I think I raised the gear because I was worried about overspeeding them, of all things. But the flaps would overspeed first. But I think I raised the gear just because I was going, I don't think too many people do this. And I'm going to have to rate the airplane up. All these things are happening in a billionth of a second, but we got out of it and we went home. And I had something to talk about. But it was scary. And, it was, if we'd gone any further, it would have been punch-out time.
What altitude were you at?
Oh, we were at the top of like Bravo, which is out near our alternate airport, which is good because we could have gone right down there. It's in southern Oklahoma. And the top of the altitude where we started this, we were in the upper part. So we were at probably about 22,000. And we were going down to the lowest part, which is probably 15 grand. So we were punching through that, going down to the low altitude one. And I think there was somebody in that. We just go by like a rock. Anyway, it wouldn't matter. But, the big sky theory is nobody's going to collide, right?
Yeah.
Even though we know there's somebody that owns
Yeah, we
that.
got that in the Navy. It's the big ocean theory.
Right.
That's how ships crash into each other.
That's it. Yeah.
That was
Anyway,
fine.
so there you go. That's my scary student story.
When you're flying with students, do they make you sick? Like when they take the stick and they're manhandling it? Are you like, ugh?
No,
fly this
because
thing.
after a while, in the 6,000-pound dog whistle, known as the lovely tweet, besides creating noise, it created smoke too. And whenever you did like a negative G, whenever you did spins, it just seemed like the J69s were always spunking out some grease. It's like being, when you're a young kid and your mom and you go behind a bus that just cranks up, and you get a big cloud of diesel fumes in your.
That would happen in the cockpit?
In the cockpit. Yeah.
So did you ever get sick, like when students were, like, did you ever get sick to your stomach? Like
No, because after about a year, you're acclimated. They're younglings that are, getting beat up, and they have to go through that.
Yeah.
But you don't want them to barf too much, because then they're going to give the boot, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't do too much. You can get sick, but you got to show some recovery, and
Yeah.
we don't want to send them to the flight surgeon, because you're going back to Belgium,
Yeah.
Not a good scene.
All right, next question.
Next question is, can you talk about some of the famous incidents in history that the U-2 was involved in and how it was used in those incidents?
Yeah, like,
For
Like
example,
Francis
the Cuban
Gary Potter's
Missile
May
Crisis.
1st, 1960. That was a pretty big deal. We lost, I forget his name, Anderson, in the Cuban Missile Crisis. Look what we did in the Cuban Missile Crisis. So the U-2 was alive and well. We launched out of bases right there because Florida's like a dagger pointing right at Cuba. So I don't think we could have pulled off the political bluffing that we were capable of doing. Well, we also had the U.S. Navy blockading. That was a pretty great achievement for us to stand down the nuclear war
well, we
threat.
knew exactly what was happening in Cuba.
We
because
knew
of
what
those
was going
U-2
on. We
overflights.
could count their toenails, and the U-2 was there doing that.
Yeah.
So we knew, okay, there's the missiles. These are SRBMs, short-range ballistic missiles. They could take out, everywhere from Denver all the way back to Miami. Let's make sure these beauties go back to their mother country,
Yeah.
the one with the red star.
Yeah. All right, next question.
Final question of the night comes from Reggie Sully again. And Reggie Sully wants to know, similar to what you just said, is it true you can photograph and read a license plate from your altitude?
Maybe newly manufactured and tossed on the ground
So
so that you
face
can
up.
actually see it.
Right. So maybe not.
versus an oblique one sitting on the back or front of a car. I'm going to go maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, can't definitely give
You
a good
can't
answer.
necessarily tell.
Can't give a definitive answer to that, but maybe.
Like, what's the pixel resolution?
Yeah.
Those cameras.
Well, again, the wet cameras, they're going off of silver chloride, right? That's what does the wet films.
Yeah,
we
but with a
still
big
have those-
freaking lens, it might as well be a telescope, right?
Right.
So, like, when you're up at that altitude, like, what's the smallest object that you can make out?
Yeah, and I'm not sure, having not been an intel officer, again, the people that
You just take the pictures.
we're really just delivery vehicles for intel. They're the ones that are going to, discombobulate everything and look at it and go, this is what we want. We finally got the shot, and we have resolution now on, what's going on.
I read an interesting thing that said, and you can confirm this or deny it or whatever, maybe lend credence to it. They said that they would just tell pilots, if you get shot down and captured, just tell them whatever you know, because we're not telling you anything anyway.
Right.
Tell them what your mission's about. I flew from here to here. Was that the level that they would imbue you with? Fly from here to here?
Well, it beats having a cyanide capsule.
Yeah, sure.
Right? I
Tell them
mean-
whatever you know. You guys don't know anything. Was that the case?
Yeah, I think it would be the case if anybody, I know Gary Powers, he had a cyanide choice, and he did the right thing. Especially, that's what Kelly Johnson said too, after the whole fracas was over and he crossed over the bridge.
I'd say.
Yeah, in Berlin. So, yeah, I mean, we're receivers of, we don't know all of the fantastic engineering that goes into the electronics that's collecting the data. All we can do is provide you a platform, and a safe one, and boldface or whatever procedures to get out of a bad situation and bring the beast back so it can be spanked and put in the air anew. That's the goal. I mean, the goal is to fly the mission. You don't need to know what the black boxes are. You know, that's magic.
That's crazy.
Those are the wizards. That's
magic black boxes.
Yeah, if I knew too much, I'd have to kill myself, right? It's like, I don't need to know that. All you need to know is what to do with the time that you have been given. You know, it's like a Gandalf kind of a thing.
That's fascinating.
You just do your job, and you don't have to ask for all the parameters and perambulations. Do you mind if you don't? And blah, blah, blah.
Well, hey, Rob, thanks for coming out. We really appreciate having you. Fascinating stories, true adventure. So thank you all for watching. Next week, we've got Robin Petgrave coming in. He founded tomorrow's Air Museum, Compton Airport, and he is a big advocate for teaching kids and students about aviation careers. So tune in next week. We will see you then. Again, my name is Rich Mayfield, member 1211 from the Adventurers Club. We'll see you next week.
Stay healthy.